I'm Michelle.
And I'm Katherine.
And we're here at the Healthy Hurried Human podcast,
where we talk about keeping pace in a world that never slows down.
This episode of the Healthy Hurried Human podcast is sponsored by Midlife Thrives. Midlife Thrives is for women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s navigating perimenopause and menopause. If you've felt the energy dips, the mood swings, or the brain fog that make you wonder if you're losing yourself, you're not alone. Midlife Thrives is here to help give you clarity, resources, and a supportive circle of women who get it. No quick fixes, no shame, just some real guidance for real life. Learn more and connect at midlifethrives.com because thriving in midlife isn't optional, it's your new standard.
Welcome back to the Healthy Hurried Human podcast. I'm Katherine.
I'm Michelle.
And we're happy to have you with us today. I'm going to start today by reading a quote from my favorite engagement guru, Marcus Buckingham. Literally came through Instagram. He posted this on Instagram yesterday. And I thought this is literally out of the Michelle Fox playbook. This is what he said. In the end, work-life balance is an unachievable goal because it asks us to aim for a monetary stasis in a world that is ever-changing. Supposing we ever get things just exactly in balance, we know for sure something will come along and unbalance them, and we'll be back to pushing our balance rock up the hill again. Mm-hmm. I thought, boy, do we have a lab for you? I mean, this is literally everything you have talked about, why you started this company, or a foundational belief about the company is that we're not striving for balance. We don't use that word when we're talking and when we're presenting and consulting because it is not achievable. It's counterintuitive to how the world works. I was talking about it with my niece. Shout out to Miller. Thanks. Wearing your earrings. Love them. Was talking to her literally last night about this. And I said, even our world is on an axis at a tilt. Like, she just rolled her eyes at me. But, it's somehow we believe that balance is what we need or stability is what we need. And
well, it's where we think we feel the most secure. So balance is achievable. It's not sustainable. And so when you're trying to, when you roll something across the table, we know eventually it's going to start wobbling. We get such a thrill out of when we roll a quarter. If you can get a quarter to roll on its edges across the table, we get excited to see it. And then we see it wobble and then we know it's going to fall. Something in that sustain, when it's going and it's rolling and it's staying upright, there's something exciting and there's fun and there's security in that. But we also live with the oncoming, it's going to wobble and it's going to fall off.
There is I only know this from social media, but there are, as a reality like game show in Germany, where it is trying to stack things without them toppling over, using a forklift or cutting something with precision. Or I'm not trying to communicate that a flat surface that's level isn't good or not achievable, and I would much rather be on a boat that is not rocking. So I'm not trying to, I think I might have been a little dramatic, shocking in my opening statements, that there are some places where balance, I want my light fixture balanced, I want my
right, of course,
pictures level.
I know that you know this. I meant that's the mindset that we can balance it. We can, we can do it. Yes, you can. I'm not going to tell you you're lying to yourself because you can. It's just what I want people, and I'm passionate about, is I want them to understand you get to have moments. And there are times in our life where we're like, okay, the sea is calm and I did it. But we have to understand it's not sustainable and it's not supposed to be. That's not how it's supposed to be. And it's that place in between calm and knowing, because as human beings, we know it's going to wobble. It's that space that we have to create some peace, because that's knowing, oh, I love it. How many times have you met somebody who's like, yeah, life is good. but I'm waiting for the other shoe to fall.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And it's, to me, that isn't a way, that's living with anxiety. That is that in itself is an anxiety that we live with. And so we almost get a little nervous when things are going good because we know it's not going to last. And so it's like, golly, why? I don't want that to be the thing that people are trying to achieve in their life, is to constantly have this thing. And I don't want anything to come and mess it up, because then you're living with a constant anxiety. Don't knock my house of cards down. I just got it built. I don't want people to live in that space, which people live in that space the majority of the time, because they're living in that space of something's coming to mess this up.
So I think I would just like to just point out two different things. We're not necessarily talking about your style of decorating, like the minimalist decorations. Mm-mm. And you and I walked into someone's house and they had nothing personal. They had nothing on the counters, hardly anything on the walls. It was just very barren, and it felt very sterile to me.
Yeah.
You walk into my house, it is visual overload. I started hosting a Bible study at my house a couple times a month, and everyone's comment was, "It's so much color." I mean, yes. And it's a lot to look at. But there's also a whole section in my house that I don't want people to see, where it's total messy and chaos. And I know that that is a mental sign of my stress and anxiety and ADHD, yada, yada, yada. So sometimes our physical spaces do reflect. But in an earlier podcast, you mentioned 3 areas: the spiritual, emotional, and relational, or is spiritual not one of them, but emotional, relational, and mental.
Mental, emotional, and relational.
Mental, emotional, and relational. And this is where Healthy Hurried Human shows up in your life.
That's right.
To talk to you about being in a healthy place, and the tools that we have to help you do an appraisal, do an assessment of yourself personally, to say, how am I in this space? So tell us a little bit more about what tell us a little bit more about what you want to talk today about the Healthy Hurried Human. We want to add a little bit more to it.
I want to talk about the consequences of a hurried life. And as a therapist, and then as a corporate consultant, I have a career of watching the consequences of constantly hurrying. And I've told you this, but I really want our listeners to understand something. There is this, especially if you're over the age of 30, there's this kind of, some people, it's loud, and for some people it's this quiet drive towards what used to be, or how it used to be, or, well, once my kids are grown, I will slow down. Or I want to try to bring in things that from my childhood, that it used to be this way because it used to be slower, like the telephones on the wall. And we go towards things that we attach to life was better and slower then, because we don't have control over how fast life is right now.
Interesting.
And so the consequences of that is that we long for something that is not going to happen. We long for slow. Or we dream about when life will slow down. And we think we know when that might be, when we're empty nesters, or when we retire, or when I have enough money, or when something's paid off. Like, we build these things up in our mind and think, when I do that, I will have achieved a slower pace. And as the therapist, as the consultant, I need you to embrace the fact that's not coming. It's not happening. And so if that's not happening, then what's the next question to ask, which is, all right, if I'm not going to be able to slow down, or if you truly can't slow down for 20 years or 15 years when your kids are gone, or until something's paid off, does that mean you live unhealthy in the meantime? And my answer is no. We have to find a way to live healthy in this hurriedness, because typically we don't see good things come out of hurry. But I think that this is where the passion comes in, we can be healthy in this hurried society. We can be healthy with no slowdown coming. And there's ways to do that, but we have to pay attention and we have to look at the areas where we're pulled. And when we're looking at those areas, it impacts us in those three different ways: our mental, our emotional, and our relational. And if we have those three things in a satisfactory place, that's, I like that word, just satisfactory. I'm satisfied emotionally, mentally, relationally. Everything else flows the way it's supposed to be. Everything else flows in a way that continues the satisfaction.
This is not in the content that we prepared, but it just really kind of hit me based on my own recent delve into healthiness for those three areas. And I kind of have talked about this, I think, before, of like scarcity mindset versus, there's going to be plenty, there's fewer resources, there are going to be plenty of resources. But also a victim mentality. And sometimes it's so subtle, but it really kind of shows up when you think you don't have control over, you don't have agency. Mm-hmm. And you're looking outside of yourself to see what is causing this problem for you. And what you've created with the Healthy Hurried Human, Michelle, gives a person agency over their mental, emotional, and relational self.
That's right.
And it is so, the more I work with this tool, myself personally, the more I understand the areas that I've let somebody else get to set the guidelines or the guardrails or tell me how it's going to be.
Tired teams don't just need another training, they need transformation. The Healthy Hurried Human Lab helps organizations build emotionally fit, resilient, and connected teams that perform better without burning out. This interactive training goes beyond theory, combining organizational psychology with personal appraisal that helps every participant understand how their mental, emotional, and relational habits show up at work. When people grow, companies thrive. Book your Healthy Hurried Human Lab for your teams today at foxygenconsulting.com and start creating healthier, more human workplace.
And the more that I can take that agency back for myself in these areas, the more internal peace I have, even in the midst of chaos.
Yeah.
And I have it, and you know this, and my family and friends know this too, is that the last few years have been a very big upheaval with me, not because necessarily of my circumstances, but the people that I love circumstances. And I'm trying to help them and show up for them. And how do I not bring that home with me? And learning how to be in the midst of a storm and know this is their storm or not my storm. It's an aspect of, in these areas, if you think someone else is causing the turmoil, going through this Healthy Hurried Human Lab really does help you take agency back to say, I actually have a choice how I show up in these areas.
That's right.
And it's life-giving. I mean, it is just putting things it's like a perfect shuffle of cards, right? Just putting everything right back where it's supposed to be aligned.
It's moving into freedom and satisfaction, because oftentimes people are walking around not realizing how held captive they really are.
And he goes back to the very first time that you talked about this with me, is the captive thoughts versus the freedom thoughts. And I was saying, those two words I don't understand how you're using those two words. And 2 years later, I'm like 100% understand that.
Yeah. It's the work. So when we're talking, you and I are talking, and I want it to be really clear for our listeners that what does it look like when we say, what is it you say? Work the wheel, roll the wheel,
run the wheel.
Run the wheel. When we're talking about this, the Healthy Hurried Human, I mean, we're doing a lot of. We pick a topic and we attach it to the wheel when it comes to the episodes. But I want people to see the big picture. I want you to stand back and see the big picture. That Healthy Hurried Human isn't just the name of our podcast. It is literally the work that we do. And it's the work we are doing within organizations, churches. We'd like to move into, volunteer and organizations. The newest thing, I'm like, a small group could be doing this, where it's a training. What does it look like? It's a training that we can offer, that we bring this to people. And I love what you said, because that's what I used to say. It is life changing. Mm-hmm. It is life giving, because it starts to show you where you're being held onto, where you're being tethered, and you can't put your finger on it before. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's got my wrist, because it's connected to something that's mental, emotional, or relational. And we get used to the captivity. We get used to it and we get comfortable with it, but yet we're not satisfied. And so when we do the training, when we show you this tool, it's like being in a dark room and somebody's turning on the light. I'm not trying to be poetic, but that's what's it look like is we do the training, we show you the work, and it's the appraisal. It's learning how to do the appraisal for yourself. So that's what it looks like.
This has been a different ask for our corporate clients, because so much of what is being put out there as a consultant is bring this on for your team. This is going to change your team dynamic. And we are consistently saying it is an individual process. And we guarantee you, healthier individuals create a healthier culture. It is such a different pitch that it really was recently you said this actually can apply beyond the workplace, because the ultimate goal is individual healthiness in these three areas. And that's why we're expanding it.
I had somebody ask me recently, they said, can you imagine what my team would look like? I was like, I can't believe they actually said that for real. They said, can you imagine if everyone on my team, including myself, if we all were aware of when we were being the difficult one in the room or on the team? Can you imagine what would happen to my team if all of us had that awareness to say, I might be the one, which is, they were talking about self-awareness and doing some work. And it's like, that would impact not just a team, but then a department. This isn't to highlight, that was just one conversation. And I thought that was amazing that they said, including myself, if I knew that I was being the difficult one, because most of the time we feel like it's somebody else is being the difficult one. That's the human nature, is to go there. But to bring the self-awareness, so I want to change it to, can you imagine if me as a leader, and then every single person just on my team had the self-awareness to know what was going on with me right now, in this moment, in this meeting, mentally, emotionally, and relationally. How am I mentally taking all of this in? How am I emotionally processing it? And then how is it causing me to interact with the people around me? If an entire team had that wouldn't just impact the team and their margins, it would start to impact departments, and then it would impact an entire culture.
It builds trust and safety.
Yeah.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking about how many times I've been in meetings or conversations or relationships in the workplace and personally, where I felt like someone else was not representing themselves the best way, putting their best foot forward, and I thought I needed to get in the middle and mediate. Not my role. One or two times it has been my role, but because I love communication and that's my top strength, and I think everything can be fixed through the right conversation, I think I created conversations and put myself in the middle of them that made it wasn't helpful like I thought it was going to be. And learning to just sometimes you're watching people be the difficult one in the room.
Yeah.
And you have to just let it happen because of, like, even if it's a sales pitch, if it's like, sometimes you can't correct them on the spot. Sometimes you should correct them on the spot. But these tools help you realize, is this the right time for me to speak up and say something? Or is it not? Is it my responsibility to fix this? Is it not? And that's I mean, I just think back to the times that I felt like I was the difficult one in the room because nobody was saying anything. And we would have a meeting and the CEO would come in and say this, and I knew 25% of the people on my side of the room disagreed with it, and he would ask, but all of them felt intimidated from saying anything because it wasn't going to change. So I would speak up and I would speak for everybody, and then it just didn't work out well. It's a very unhealthy example, but I don't know how I randomly went down that rabbit hole, but these are real life scenarios where I walked away feeling like I was the difficult one in the room, when the reality was it was a much different process. It was because the CEO, the way the questions were asked and all this other stuff. But if I hadn't said anything, then I wouldn't have drawn attention to myself, because then the CEO wrote it off was, oh, Catherine's being difficult.
Yeah.
I'm trying to champion something that doesn't have anything to do with me, so I don't have to listen to it. Instead of finding a better way, if I in that moment had just let it play out and then found another avenue to bring where people felt comfortable.
So this is why it matters, is because you may have spoken up and maybe it failed, but I'm going to guess that, let's say there's 10 people in the room, the other 8 people in the room, minus you and the CEO or whoever's leading it, are regulating themselves and saying, I'll find a different way, but then they don't.
Never do.
They don't, because again, they aren't applying the things of saying, does this really matter to me? Is this something that is actually secretly holding me captive because of the way this is operating? And it's like, this gives you the tools. Most people don't do anything because they really don't know how, and they're afraid of the consequences. I believe so much in our healthy, hurried human appraisal and wheel that it gives you the tools that you need to take the actions that you need to take in the spaces that you occupy. You can't learn. This is something I said the other day, and I'm just going to read my own quote. You can't learn how to harness the hurried unless you know how to evaluate it. And just to pull in what you were just saying, that people are walking around feeling hurried, and then they hear people say, oh, balance is a myth, or we can't achieve it, or it's not sustainable. All of those things are true, but that doesn't fix their hurried, because they haven't learned how to look at it and evaluate, in what way am I feeling hurried, that hurry is not pushing me forward in the place that I want to be, in a place of freedom and satisfaction
and clarity.
And yes, and clarity. And so if you can't evaluate the hurry that you're in, you're never going to be able to do anything with it. And so we have created that system that harnesses it and helps you evaluate it, and then gives you the tools for it.
I think that there are a couple of other factors that we had talked about earlier, is taking a step back and evaluating why that meeting was hurried. What is putting the pressure on your meeting, your group, whatever? Because we sometimes have this concept that pressure is bad. Mm-hmm. Especially a lot of the Gen Zers that we're talking to, when they feel pressure, they get really nervous because it makes them feel like something's bad. If it's pressure, it's bad. And you and I don't necessarily believe that pressure is bad.
Not all pressure is bad.
Not all pressure is bad. Not all friction is bad. And friction is actually quite necessary. But if you see friction as conflict and not necessarily as sharpening or strengthening, then it's perceived as bad.
I think we have to, for me, is it productive? Is it productive pressure? Is it productive friction? And we have to be open to, so many people are used to, when they feel it, oh, it's conflict, I don't like it. And they start emotionally and physically responding to that, instead of taking a breath, looking at it and saying, wait a minute, what is this? I had a boss, one of my first bosses, out of college, and learned the most from, would say to me, look, we're disagreeing, but you know what? This causes us to, because look at how we're disagreeing. He used to point it out. We're disagreeing because, but it's building my respect for you. And I think it's probably building your respect for me.
Some of that is, personality. Like some people will say, oh, that's just my personality. I'm just contrarian and like that about yourself. But is it beneficial and helpful? And these captive versus freedom thoughts. And when I know personally, when I'm in a better space, I'm also more open to hearing what someone else has to say. And how often do we talk to talk and not have a conversation to listen? That's a big part of it. If you're operating from the deficit, operating from a victim standpoint, or this hurriedness,
or an ego standpoint where it's like, I just said something and that person is saying something they don't like about it, or they're disagreeing with me. That's for me, huge. That can be, I have had to learn that I have to pay attention to my body, my physical response, because you do this to me a lot, because you and I work together. So we work very closely. That's why I say a lot. But I'll say something and I can already see it. Your body will change. And I'm like, oh, she's about to push back on this. When I'm in a good place, I'm like, bring it. Like, let's do it. Let's, cut that turkey. But there are times when I'm like, I just, maybe I have an agenda or I wanted and I have to pay attention because my body will start to be like I feel it. And it's like, hey, we're just having a conversation here. Mm-hmm. Nobody's writing a bill at Congress. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to pay attention to my body, but that is something I have had to learn. And that is a tool that I have. Pay attention. My body sends me the signal first. We don't like that somebody is a disagreement. My ego has just been attacked.
That is one of the things that I had a chiropractor say to me and a dentist both say to me after leaving a situation that was not great. They were like, you have less inflammation and the chiropractor said you're so much easier to adjust. And my dentist was like, your gums are so much better. And the only thing that I had changed was the work scenario. And I didn't realize how much my shoulders got closer to my ears. And so I think when I'm like I now have this posture of like, I don't know that I agree with that. Like I will figure out like, how do I feel that? And
so when I say that mental, physical, and our mental, emotional, and relational drives everything. And trust me, over the years, I've been like, wait, does that fit? Does this fit? Because I think about physical and financial. I'm not a guru in those areas, but to me, I feel like mental, emotional, and relational drive those things, because when we are in a healthy, satisfactory place of freedom, mentally, emotionally, relationally, we make better decisions financially. Mm-hmm. We make better decisions professionally. We make better decisions for our physical self.
So if you want to make better decisions, and if you want to be at a place where you find more satisfaction, or for me, you don't feel like you have to enter the chaos or jump feet first into the fight or the conflict. If you want to learn to be an observer and to the difference between captive and freedom thoughts, Healthy Hurried Human might be right up your alley, and it might be exactly what you're looking for.
Yep, and you can reach out to talk to us for more information at info@foxygenconsulting.com. The Healthy Hurried Human podcast is brought to you by Foxygen Consulting and a handful of silent sponsors who believe in this work and quietly keep us going. We see you, we thank you, and we are glad that you're part of this journey.